welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 499, and today's date is October 22nd, 2014, and the title of this episode is Government's Secret Black Book on How Individuals Are Placed on the Terror List. Now, before I get started, I just want to thank those people who donated to the X22Report.com site. I really do appreciate it, and I am very grateful for those donations. Thank you very much. And if you haven't visited the X22Report.com site, you can come on down. There are many different tabs that I have on there, and you can take a look around. We do have the forum, which is called The People. It is completely free to join. It is like-minded people talking about the economic collapse and different issues that are going on around the world. And if you are hesitant in joining, I understand. You can read it. You can read every single post without joining up, no problem. You just can't respond to the posts or, join in on the discussion. But if you'd like to join in, all you need is a name, a handle, and an email address. And of course, you can use any email address you want. You can make one up just for this, just so you can confirm that it is you. And then you are ready to go. And that's all you need to join the people. And again, you can read it without joining up whatsoever. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand the real economic indicators are starting to shine through now. We look at the stock market today. We see it is plunging once again. It is down. The high-frequency team, the plunge protection team, they just couldn't bring it into the positive range. Looks like the investors are looking at the situation and saying, you know what, maybe it's time to cash out right now. I'm a little hesitant in keeping my money in the market. Let's start pulling it out. And of course, we had that little bump up when the Fed came out there saying, okay, maybe we're going to extend quantitative easing. Maybe we're going to even add QE4. And of course, they did this because the market was continually dropping, and now we see it is dropping once again. So they might have to mention this once again, or they might have to kind of not taper at this time, because as we can see, the free money is the only thing keeping this entire system going. Like I said yesterday, it's about $200 billion a quarter to keep this whole system up from crashing and tumbling down. But we look at the consumer price index right now, and last month's shocking 0.2% drop in CPI was driven mostly by the plunging gasoline prices. But September, it looks like consumer prices have gone back up about 1.7% from a year ago, or 0.1% month over month. The broad prices were pushed lower by another month of declining energy prices. The index for beef and veal rose 2% in September and has now risen 16.7% since January. The index for dairy and related products increased 0.5%, its 10th increase in the last 11 months. And when we look at the food index, it rose about 0.3% in September after increasing 0.2% in August. The index for meats, poultry, fish, eggs continue to rise, increasing 0.7% after a 1.5% increase in August. The index for beef and veal rose 2% in September and has now risen 16.7% since January. The index for dairy and related products increased 0.5%, its 10th increase in the last 11 months. And again, when you go to the markets, you can see that food is continually going up. Of course, the energy prices, the gas prices are coming down right now because what the U.S. government, Saudi Arabia, what they're trying to do is they're trying to plunge the oil prices, trying to make it look like the sanctions are working against Russia. They're trying to destroy the economy of Russia, and I really don't think it's having the effect they really want. And we might see gas prices go right back up as soon as they start to realize that maybe we're hurting the U.S. economy more so than the Russian economy. Now, it looks like real hourly wages have dropped in September. BLS announced that real average hourly earnings declined once again, this time from $10.34 to $10.32, which is a negative 0.2% drop from the past month. There now has been about 5 outright decreases in real hour wages since March of this year. Putting America's real wages in context, the $10.34 real hourly wage is at a level last seen in December of 2008, just after the Lehman collapse. So we can see right now wages are coming down, not going up, and prices of food and energy are increasing. Even though energy has come down, they're still at all-time highs right now. I mean, we're paying over $3 a gallon for gas. Yes, in other places you might see $2.80 or $2.90, and in some places you might see closer to $4. But we can see gas prices are very, very high, and when you go to the market, you know food is continually increasing, and this is why McDonald's, they are having a huge amount of trouble because their dollar menu is no longer a dollar, and if your real wages aren't going up and they're decreasing and the prices of everything else is going up, guess what? You just can't afford it. Now, we talk a lot about retail, and we understand that the retail market is really getting hit hard. Why? Because a lot of people are unemployed, underemployed, and they just don't have those discretionary funds to say, you know what, let's go out to the store and buy something nice. Instead, they're worrying about how they're going to feed their family, how they're going to pay rent, and how they're going to put clothes on their kids, and this is what they're worried about right now. But what we're seeing is the chain store sales growth plunged 2.1% year on year. This is the weakest in 5 months and worse for this time of year since 2010. This is not going well. And yesterday we reported that existing home sales, they saw a bump up, but if you look back 1 year, housing is 1.7% lower than last September. Think about this for a second. How could this possibly be? We have unemployment coming down to 5.9%. That means more people are employed. That means more people are saving. You would think that more people would say, okay, now it's time for me to go out and purchase a house. But we are not seeing this. We're not seeing this in retail. Why? Because these jobs are not full-time, high-paying jobs. This cannot be sustained, and it's evident in the real estate market and in the retail market. And in the mortgages, we see they are continually moving downward, not up. So people who are applying for mortgages, they're non-existent at this time. And what else are we seeing with housing? Well, we see inventory for sale is 6% higher than last September. Lower sales and higher inventory always do wonders for prices. And what does that mean? Prices are coming down. This means people can't move their homes. So more and more are being added to the market. They're staying on the market longer. Prices are now starting to come down. People are getting nervous. They don't know what's going on. And we also have to remember the first-time home buyers should be around 40%. It is around 29%. This is not a good sign. And mortgage applications remain at 2-decade lows despite mortgage rates below 4%. Think about this. Mortgage rates below 4%. And the banks, the mortgage departments have been laying off people left and right by the thousands. Go back to 2013. Go onto Google. You will see J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citibank laying off tens of thousands of people starting back in August of 2013 because they knew the American people were not going to be able to take out these loans. And it is completely evident today, 1 year later. Now, the gauge of loan requests for home purchases, a leading indicator of home sales, fell again by 4.8%. This means we are heading into some bad times come this winter. And of course, the central bankers, the U.S. government, they are doing everything they possibly can to push this market up. I mean, we see Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac out there saying, listen, you only need 3% down to purchase a home. And guess what? We'll just take any subprime person right now. If you have a heartbeat, we'll give you some we'll give you a home loan. We'll even insure it and guarantee it. Just pick up a house, please. And they're doing everything they possibly can. We're seeing the same thing in the auto industry, and that's starting to backfire because we're seeing delinquencies rising. They're up about 70%, and this whole thing cannot be sustained. And eventually what's going to happen? The entire system is going to come crumbling down. Now, as we see, the stock market is rising to new highs. Today it has come down again, but they're trying to keep this up, and they're trying to keep gold suppressed. But what's very interesting is that the demand for gold continues to be robust and has indeed increased significantly in recent weeks despite gold's most recent paper-driven gold weakness. Demand in China and India surged again, and gold reserve diversification by the Central Bank of Russia hit a new record high in September as geopolitical tensions rose. Gold imports into India in September were worth 3.8 billion. This figure is almost double the 2 billion spent by Indians in August. And as once again the Indian middle class, like their Chinese counterparts, used the opportunity of weakened gold price to increase their holdings. To put this figure in context, it is worth noting that in August of 2013, gold imports were valued at just 739 million. Indian gold imports were up 449% year over year in September, which is approximately about 94 tons using the average gold price for September. And we can see right now that the paper gold does not reflect the demand of physical gold. And I know you hear this a lot out there. And again, I do not sell gold. I do not sell precious metals. I pick up precious metals and gold, silver each month. Even if I pick up a gram of gold or a couple of silver eagles, I do it every single month. You don't have to spend $2,000, $3,000 a month. Sometimes you can spend $80. Just continually pick it up every single month, and before you know it, you will be surprised how much you have. I've been doing this for quite a while, and when I look at what I have, I am absolutely surprised of the amount that I have accumulated. I mean, there are some people out there that can do a lot more, and other people just don't have the resources to do this, and they have to do it slowly like I am. Now, Russia is out there, and they're saying that they have good fundamentals, and the U.S. will not be able to destroy the ruble. Russia's currency has taken a significant 20% plunge this year against the dollar and euro, but analysts are confident that Russia's sturdy stash of foreign reserves and minuscule external debt make the ruble one of the most stable currencies. Russia's vast gold and foreign currency reserves will help weather the ruble's rough patch at more than 450 billion. They are the third largest reserves in the world. Russian foreign debt is slightly less than 721 billion as of July 2014. The U.S., by comparison, has over $17.7 trillion in external debt, which makes its currency vulnerable should any big bondholder decide to cash in and suddenly sell. And yes, they are saying the truth here. If a huge bondholder decides to do this, the U.S. economy will come crumbling down. And of course, Obama has, 2 more years to go. We're at 17.7 trillion. I think it's closer to 17.9 trillion right now. We might hit $20 trillion. When he took office, what was it at? 10 trillion? Unbelievable. Now it looks like Total, the French company where the chief executive died, the oil company where he was in this plane crash, and they're investigating that right now. And of course, he is the one who was out there saying that you don't really have to use the dollar to purchase oil. You can use any other currency or gold, silver, whatever else you want to use. But it looks like Total has named a new chief executive at an emergency meeting, and the company right now is saying they are going to continue with all projects with Russia. Total is not planning to wind down its partnership with Moscow, but I don't know what the new CEO, what his take is on selling oil, not using the dollar, and we'll have to wait to see if somebody asks him the question and what his thoughts are on this. Now, Facebook is out there, and we understand that the government has trolls running around Facebook, YouTube. I see them on my channel all the time. They're just out there continually saying ridiculous things, and they're all over the place trying to make people confused on what's really going on. And it looks like Facebook They are demanding the DEA stop using fake profiles in investigations. Facebook has written a letter to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration demanding it stop operating fake profile pages and cease all agency activities on the social network that involve impersonation of others during ongoing DEA investigation. And we understand in a report that I did a couple weeks ago, there was a woman who they took her identity and was using it to lure people in, and we can see right now the DE says, oh, sure, we're not going to do this anymore. And you know what? You know they definitely are going to do this. They're going to continue with their operation, and they're just going to ignore what Facebook really wants. Now, it looks like the autopsy for Michael Brown, the results are coming in, and a newly leaked autopsy of Michael Brown indicates a gunshot wound to the hand from close range. Brown's hand was close to the weapon of the Ferguson police officer. And we have to watch this very, very carefully, because what we're seeing is if the evidence points to the police officer and he is fine and dandy and he did nothing wrong, the people in Ferguson, with the help of agent provocateurs, might set off riots around the country. And we're going to have to watch this very closely, because as we know, this is what they were trying to do before. We understood that people from outside of the town were coming in and throwing bottles, causing havoc, trying to gin things up, and we saw they were trying to spread this across the country. So we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully on how this turns out. Now, it seems that the Obama administration has quietly approved a substantial expansion of the terrorist watch list system, authorizing a secret process that requires neither concrete facts nor irrefutable evidence to designate an American or foreigner as a terrorist, according to key government documents. A 166-page document issued last year by the National Counterterrorism Center spells out the government's secret rules for putting individuals on its main terrorist database, as well as the no-fly list and the selectee list, which triggers enhanced screening at airports and border crossings. The new guidelines allow individuals to be designated as representatives of terror organizations without any evidence they are actually connected to such organizations, and it gives a single White House official the unilateral authority to place entire categories of people the government is tracking onto the no-fly and selectee lists. The rule book was developed behind closed doors by representatives of the nation's intelligence, military, and law enforcement establishments, including the Pentagon, CIA, NSA, and FBI. It reveals a confounding and convoluted system filled with exceptions to its own rules, and it relies on the elastic concept of reasonable suspicion as a standard for determining whether someone is a possible threat. Instead of a watch list limited to actual known terrorists, the government has built a vast system based on the unproven, flawed premise that it can predict if a person will commit a terrorist act in the future. This is coming from Hina Shasmi, from the head of the ACLU's National Security Project. On that dangerous theory, the government is secretly blacklisting people as suspected terrorists and giving them the impossible task of proving themselves innocent of a threat that they haven't carried out yet. The document's definition of a terrorist activity includes actions that fall short of bombing or hijacking. In addition to expected crimes such as assassination or hostage-taking, the guidelines also define destruction of government property and damaging computers used by financial institutions as activities meriting placement on the list. They also define as terrorism any act that is dangerous to property and intended to influence government policy. So this is very interesting. And we also have to understand is this selectee list that they're creating, and we know there's many lists at different levels where the spying apparatus is keeping an eye on every single American, and this is really what they're looking at. And this goes on to say that once the U.S. government secretly labels you a terrorist or a terrorist suspect, other institutions tend to treat you as one. It can become difficult to get a job or simply stay out of jail. It can become burdensome or impossible to travel, and a routine encounters with law enforcement can turn into ordeals. And we have to remember, they just don't look at you, they look at all your contacts, and then they look at them to see, they're associated with this person. And this is why I've been saying they've been creating social profiles of every single person. And with this new Real ID system where they take your iris scan DNA, they put an RFID chip into your license, and they have a barcode just in case the RFID chip malfunctions. This is all being used to track every single person and to create social profiles so they understand who is a threat to their authority. Now, it looks like in Canada we had this crazy shootout at the Parliament buildings. The Ottawa Police Service and Royal Canadian Mounted Police responded to reports of a shooting incident this morning in the downtown area. Police can now confirm that incidents occurring at the National War Memorial and on the Parliament Hill. It looked like a dark-clothed gunman fired shots just before 10 a.m. at the Canadian War Memorial, where a uniformed soldier was shot. The gunman then fled for the Parliament Hill, where he unleashed more gunfire inside the center block. And it seems that this whole thing was created, and it looks like the FBI is getting involved in this whole thing. And the story is just unfolding right now, and we'll have to follow this story along as it more comes out about what has been going on. Now, in regards to Ebola, it looks like the NBC News crewman Ashoka Makpu declared Ebola free right now. The infectious disease expert saying that the Ebola virus test has a fatal flaw. An infectious disease expert has stated that the test used to detect the Ebola virus in humans has a fatal flaw. The result will be a negative until enough of the virus is built up in the person's body. And this is the test that they're using right now. Not that military test, but there are other tests that are being developed that are going to be put into the field. But right now, it is the standard test that they're using, and they're saying if you don't have enough of the virus in there, you can get a result that really doesn't show that you have it, even though you do. And it looks like there are riots being sparked in Sierra Leone right now. They tried to pick up this 90-year-old woman. They wanted to give her Ebola test to see if she had Ebola, and it looks like people didn't want this to happen, and rioting started to flare up in Sierra Leone. And we have to understand Sierra Leone is being hit quite hard with Ebola at this time. It looks like Liberia is starting to calm down. We understand Nigeria, Senegal, they have been deemed Ebola free, and we can see right now they're trying to get everything under control in these areas. Now, the Liberia's health officials, they are out there. The Liberia Medicines and Health Products Regulatory Authority, they have come out and they said, listen, we are not going to be the guinea pigs for these trial Ebola drugs. We are going to refuse to take them without any type of trials, without any type of testing to make sure they are safe for people. And the authorities want to end the Ebola outbreak, but only with proper and approved medicines. They were forced to speak out when reports claimed that the treatment drug Flip entered the country, and they're saying enough is enough. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these vaccines are actually causing people to get Ebola. And we're having a lot of reports come out of this area saying, yes, those people who have been vaccinated, those are the people that actually got Ebola. So we have to watch this very carefully. And again, we know the drug companies are trying to fast-track these vaccines. They want to put them out there. They want to say, listen, you want to be safe? Take this vaccine. And we don't know what's in these vaccines. They fast-tracked them. They're not proven. They haven't been around for a long time. And I would be very, very hesitant and careful about these vaccines, because it reminds me of the 2009 swine flu, where they had all these computer models telling us that this thing is going to really go crazy. The numbers were in the millions, and they wanted everyone to line up to get the swine flu vaccine that they were giving out. And of course, all of a sudden, it just died down and went away. And we're seeing the same thing happen with Ebola. It is contained in West Africa right now. They set up here in the United States screening where they're going to take these people, send them to certain airports, and have them screened. And I see certain people are being quarantined right now. And we haven't had any more cases show up except for the two nurses and the doctor. And the patient zero. And all the other cases right now are turning up negative at this time. Now, in Ukraine, we understand that the chemical factory was hit by something. We don't know, or there was just an explosion there. But the OSCE, they're trying to get into this area. And what's very interesting is that the Ukrainian military is continually shelling this area, keeping the OSCE people out. They don't want them to enter, and they're trying to get in there, but it is not safe to maneuver into this area. Now, it looks like Russia is out there, and the southeastern people are out there saying that the forces of Kiev government used cluster munitions in populated areas in the city of Donetsk in the eastern Ukraine area, and the Human Rights Watch is looking at this and reporting on this. It adds that the use of this is forbidden under certain laws of war. Human Rights Watch was documenting the widespread of use of cluster munitions in fighting between government troops and self-defense forces, according to an investigation carried by the watchdog. While it was not possible to conclusively determine responsibility for many of the attacks, the evidence points to Ukrainian government forces responsibility for several cluster munition attacks on Donetsk and Lugansk, says the report. Kiev, however, completely denies any of this, just like they denied the downing of MH17. And of course, the U.S. puppet government was taking order from the bankers saying, listen, you will use anything and everything to take back the southeastern section. And even though we have a ceasefire, we still have skirmishes and fighting going on inside Ukraine. Now, it looks like Russia, they're going to span their entire Arctic with bases. Russia will have military control of the entirety of its 6,200-kilometer Arctic coastline zone by the end of 2014. Just a year after Moscow announced its ambitious plan to build military presence in the region, Russia is also in the process of unsealing at least 7 airstrips that were shut down during the Soviet Union collapse. So they're bringing those back in operation. Of course, Russia realizes what's going on. They realize the central bankers are not going to stop. They're going to continually provoke, and they want a war to cover up this entire economic collapse. So they're not going to stop. And we can see China, Russia, North Korea, all these nations taking preparations because they realize what is coming. Work also began in September on a permanent base located on the New Siberian Islands in the Laptev Sea. A military group consisting of 2 brigades will be stationed in the far north as part of the new military district. The Arctic has attracted an increasingly intense gaze from the powerful nations that border it in the past decade, not least because it's thought to contain up to 30% of the world's oil and gas. And we understand the United States and Canada are also in the Arctic, making claims in the same area, and also it is a very strategic area to place bases because of the missile firing, which has a shorter range coming from this area. Okay, now it looks like U.S. aid is helping to fund ISIS. Federal aid is being funneled to the very people the U.S. military is battling. Aid convoys are forced to pay the Islamic State leaders to allow the convoys to enter the regions where the extremists have strongholds. The convoys have to be approved by the Islamic State, and you have to pay them. The bribes are disguised as itemized as transportation costs. And whether any of the aid actually reaches the civilians is completely unknown. So right now we have USAID bringing in this stuff, and they're paying the Islamic State, and the Islamic State takes the aid, and they don't know what happens to it. So basically what's happening is they're funding the Islamic State, just like the United States dropped humanitarian aid and weapons, and they landed in the Islamic State area, which this is the area they completely control. Now it looks like the Chechen president is screaming on the top of his lungs. The President Ramzan Kadyrov says the Islamic State terrorist group leader Baghdadi works for the CIA and is financially supported by the Western Secret Service. So the Chechen president is even out there saying, yes, the United States, Israel, UK, and other Arab nations, they all support the Islamic State, and the CIA, Mossad, MI6, they're all involved in this, and they're controlling the operations of the Islamic State. So everyone is starting to catch wind right now of what is really going on. Now, Syria is out there, and they're saying, you know what? We're going to give military support to the Kurds in Kobani. Syrian armed forces, including its aircraft, have been providing military support to the Kurdish fighters defending the town of Kobani. And we can see right now they are helping out. And the Islamic State is saying that the weapons that were dropped from the sky landed in their area, the area they controlled. And come on, the United States central bankers, they didn't know where to drop this. Of course they did. They dropped it exactly where they wanted it to go. And of course they're using the excuse right now that, oh, it was a mistake, we didn't really mean to do this. And also this helps explain away why the Islamic State has American-made military equipment. Now, a top Senate Democrat, he is calling for a buffer zone, a no-fly zone in Syria. Carl Levin, head of the Senate Armed Service Committee, now says the United States needs to create a buffer zone in Syria for the rebels using Turkish troops and American air power. Why? Because the Islamic State has an air force. But don't worry, because Syria claims that they have destroyed 2 of the jets that the Islamic State has, and they're going after the other one right now, and once they find it, they will destroy that one. So they're going to put the air force of the Islamic State to rest here, and again we go back to, why do we need a no-fly zone if the Islamic State doesn't have an air force? It really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But of course they want the no-fly zone, because eventually what they're going to do is they're going to create that zone between Turkey and Syria, and they're going to have the Turkish troops come in. Once they're attacked, NATO will join in, and they're going to pretty much destroy the Syrian Air Force, because this is what they need to maneuver all the Free Syrian Army soldiers, the Islamic State soldiers, the Turkish soldiers, all into Syria to go after Assad, and this is their plan. Now, it looks like Staples was hit by a cyber attack. We don't know the extent of it and what was really stolen at this time, and we're seeing a lot of retailers being hit by cyber attacks recently. And you have to remember, most of these systems have backdoors, which was created by the NSA, who made deals with a lot of the computer manufacturers or made deals with the companies. And you have to remember, criminals can find these backdoors and use them. But what I see happening here is that in this short period of time, going back to November to right now, it seems like we've had a lot of data breaches. And of course, as we know, they always create something, and some type of an event, some type of an urgent need, while they have the solution on the back end. And the solution is CISA or CISPA, which is pending in the Senate. They want to vote on that and have it passed. The President has already created all the executive orders that will support this, and what this does is allows companies to share your private information with the government, and they cannot be held responsible. And there's a lot of other things in these documents which will allow the government to pretty much take control of the internet. And we can see they're pushing this agenda very, very hard. And each time we see this, they put out calls to say, okay, do you think we have the votes to push this through? And of course, Obama's out there saying, no, if these CISPA or CISPA cross my desk, I'm going to veto it. But then again, whatever he says is the opposite. Why did he create the executive orders that supports these bills? It makes no sense of why he would veto it then. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.